Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Loretta Besson, and I am a retirement plan specialist here at Goulden and McCarthy. I would like to welcome you to our Financial Wellness Program series of webinars. I am joined today by Karen Drancic, Senior Consultant with the Neuberger Berman Advisor Institute, who will cover the presentation on life events, things that happen to you. This presentation will focus on how changes in your work, personal life, and family status can affect your income and how you invest. We hope you find this information helpful, especially during these challenging times in the world. As a reminder, our team at Goulden & McCarthy is available to help answer any questions you may have regarding this presentation or your financial plan more broadly. We will not be taking questions during this session. The content will be recorded and housed on our website, and certainly if there are any follow-up questions, please reach out to our office. I will provide our contact information again following the presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to Karen.
Terrific. Thanks, Loretta, and hello, everybody. The reason that we're talking about something called life events, things that happen to you, are because, believe it or not, there are a lot of things that happen to people on an everyday basis that literally can be planned for. Most people start thinking about planning when they get their first job. They start thinking about the day that they can actually retire. So retirement is certainly a big goal. Another thing that people typically plan to save for is college education for their children. Those are the two biggies, but there are quite a few more that kind of fall into the category of getting lost by the wayside. And we want to remind you of some of the things that you should be thinking about, regardless of your age, on everyday ordinary things that happen in your life that you should be planning for. So I'm trying to figure out how to get the advance. Oh, I got to press a button on here. So here we go. Number one, financial planning for a lifetime. Certainly retirement is probably the biggest goal that you're going to be planning for, but we are facing some extraordinary challenges for planning for retirement today. Number one, we are actually living longer. The average life expectancy in our country is 78.9 years. However, men's and women's life expectancy are a little bit different. According to the CDC, today a woman can expect to live to her mid-80s, and a man can expect to live around 77 to 78 years old. That presents some challenges down the road for all those women that outlive their husbands. 70% of all women will actually outlive their husband. And for the guys that are on this call, I hate to shatter your bubble there. The other thing is that we are becoming increasingly responsible on our own retirement assets. Social Security, more and more people are just thinking that it's not going to be around when they retire, or it's going to be diminished in some capacity, and the government's not going to be paying out what they said they're going to be paying out. So we are starting to pick up the burden more and more. The problem with that is the number of people who have pension plans and the number of workers who are contributing to Social Security is going down instead of going up. So that presents another unique set of challenges that we need to address. And I'll get to that a little bit more when we get to the actual retirement slides. Here are the other things that are facing us that are problematic when saving for retirement. Number one, we already mentioned our life expectancy is increasing, not decreasing. The amount of time that the average American spends in retirement is about 20 years. However, my father-in-law retired at age 55 and has been retired for as long as he actually worked, which is unusual. Most Americans today are generally not planning to retire until they're in their 70s. I know I am one of those. The other thing is the number of workers paying into Social Security, like I mentioned, is going down. Employees are increasingly becoming responsible on things like 401k plans or other qualified savings plans, as opposed to defined benefit plans, which are the old pensions. I am lucky enough to actually be the recipient of 2 pensions already, but I'm not in the majority here. More and more people are not getting that, so you're going to be responsible for your own. And the problem with all of this is if we're left to be doing it on our own, not that many of us feel overly confident in our ability to save the correct way. So here's what we're going to be talking about going forward. the life events that you need to save for along the way. So, I'm sorry, I forgot to advance that slide. You can see it looks like a road, and essentially that's what it is. Along the way, you're going to be facing a lot of things that are going to cost money or require planning, and we're just going to address some of these things and what the major impact is going to be on your finances. The things specifically we're talking about are getting married, having a child, changing your job, whether it's willful change of job or not, again, preparing for retirement, and then estate planning. And for those of you that are under the age of 40, you still need to be looking at your estate plan. So I am going to give it a little bit of an attention towards the end. Number one, getting married. This is something that is a joyful time, and my household is in that planning mode at the moment. My oldest son just got engaged 2 weeks ago, and we are working with the bride's family to plan their wedding. The average cost of a wedding today, here we go, advance the slide, is $33,900. That is a lot of moolah. And it's not just the bride's family that's on the hook for paying for the wedding anymore, like it was in the old days. More and more couples are contributing their own funds to their wedding, and more families, bride and groom, are planning to spend to pay for the wedding too. My husband and I are actually going to be contributing to my son's wedding along with the bride's family. So it's going to require some savings. And along with planning for the actual ceremony itself, there are other things that need to be considered when you're looking at getting married. First and foremost, a conversation about finances with your spouse-to-be. The biggest cause of divorces in this country is arguments over money. So more and more couples are starting to have these conversations amongst themselves and with financial advisors, so that everybody's on the same page and knows what to expect when it comes to saving. You should certainly understand your prospective spouse's debt situation, credit score, spending habits, and general attitudes about money. The other thing is that you should be planning for saving together, joint goals, so to speak, and create a joint budget. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a joint checking account, but everyone in the household should understand how much money goes out the door, who gets paid, when does it get paid, and how much of their income is going to be contributed towards savings on a monthly basis. And lastly, when you're going to get married, a few little practical things that you need to remember. If you are planning on changing your name, gals or guys, you certainly need to go to the Social Security office to officially change your name, but then you need to change your name on absolutely everything. So your driver's license, all of your account information, and it takes a little bit of time. So start planning ahead for that. The other thing is to remember to check all the beneficiary information on everything that you own that has a beneficiary. So your 401k plan, your IRA, your life insurance information. And this is one that can come back and get you at a later time. I didn't get married till I was 44 years old. And I found out 4 years ago, we've been married for 16 years already. I found out 4 years ago that I had forgotten to change my beneficiaries from my mom and my dad on my life insurance to my husband and my 2 stepchildren. So that's one of the things that I encourage you to do either immediately before or immediately after the ceremony. So that's getting married. The next biggest one, obviously, is what happens when you have a child. If your family is growing, it's going to cost you, why didn't that advance correctly? For some reason, Loretta, I'm getting half pages here.
Okay, you know what? Let me just take over on my end if that works for you.
Yeah, I'm getting half pages.
Okay.
Sorry for the technical difficulty, folks. Yeah, we're on page 10.
Okay. Are you seeing that now on my end?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Here's how much it costs to raise a child from birth until they get out of the house when they go away to college, hopefully. Anywhere from $233,610 for a married middle-income couple to raise a child to age 17. And that does not include the cost of college. And the cost of college we're going to get into in just a second. But you can also expect to spend anywhere from $12,000 to $14,000 a year per child. So it's wise to start planning, not when you find out that you're pregnant, but long before you ever think about starting to have your kids. Now, with respect to the finances, once you have the children, certainly you're going to have to adjust your health insurance coverage to include the new beneficiary in the household, your child. Does it change your policy limits? Does it change your deductibles? What's covered when you're having a child? Does it cover in vitro treatment? Does it cover amniocentesis? Does it include cesarean deliveries? So you're going to need to prepare for a few out-of-pocket expenses because most insurances are going to have some things that they just won't pay for. Again, you're going to have to reassess your life insurance coverage. And the other thing from a legal perspective that most people don't do until the kid is already old enough to think about this is, who are you going to designate as a guardian to take care of that child if anything should happen to you or your spouse together? That requires not only finding a person to do it, but actually setting up documents in place with an estate planning attorney to set out how you would like to have your child raised. So for those of you that are on the younger side, this is one of the big reasons why you would need to make that trip to the estate planning attorney. And along the way with that child, I'll just give you the benefit of my experience here. When they go away to college, it's a good idea to also visit the estate planning attorney to have your now adult child, who is aged 18 when they leave, to give you their power of attorney in the event that anything happens to them at school. You will actually be able to get from the hospital. That was an eye-opener for us when we sent our first one away to school. Now, the early cost for raising a child, I think you can see the things here. $3,600 for housing, $2,200 for food, $1,900 for transportation, and that's even if you don't buy them a car. $200 for childcare, $1,100 for healthcare, and $1,600 for clothing and miscellaneous. All of this is before they can actually drive. And then you have to start worrying about college. I actually took a look yesterday at the U.S. News and World Report rankings for colleges in the United States and looked at how much tuition is costing these days. I seriously didn't see one under $36,000 a year for out of state. In-state certainly is a little bit better, but college is not cheap. And the average person can expect to spend per child about $200,000 a year, excuse me, $200,000 total to send a child to college today. That means you're going to need to start saving early. There are certainly more vehicles around today to help you start saving. And if you haven't thought about this, now is a time to actually make a visit to your financial advisor to think about opening up a 529 plan to help you save for that college education. All right, changing jobs, willfully or not. All right, 4.2 is the median number of years that today's workers are currently employed with that employer. If you compared this to something going all the way back to like the 1960s and 70s, it would be grossly different. Back then, a lot of people went to work for a company and stayed there their entire careers. My generation, the later baby boomer generations were amongst the first to actually start the whole job hopping trend. So, my tenure tends to be anywhere from 8 to 10 years per employer, but with the millennials, it's certainly under 4 years. Next slide. Okay. The things to consider though. If you are planning to change jobs, or if you suspect that you might be losing your job not of your own volition, it's going to require you to make some changes in your budget, obviously. Be careful and realistic about expected income when you make that job change. And if you're not working at all, you need to adjust it to whatever unemployment is paying or whatever other resources that you have. When you do make the job change, when you get the offer, I should say, it's also a really good idea, if you have the wherewithal to do this, have your financial advisor run the numbers on total compensation, and not just the income, because a lot of times it's the actual benefits that can make a job more appealing. And then if you are unemployed, certainly, and this is a hard one for a lot of people that have a certain amount of pride, go to the unemployment office. Not only are you're entitled to what you're receiving for unemployment, but it's also a great way to keep you motivated on looking for the job. I hate to say it, but it's happened to me once or twice in my career, and I never felt guilty about taking the money out, and I was actually grateful that I had somebody on my behind to be, making sure I was looking for that next job. Other factors to consider: calculating your Social Security benefits. If you're out of the workforce for a certain period of time, that's going to change your overall output for Social Security. And the other thing is, if you're looking at changing jobs and starting your own business, I don't think this is going to be a big surprise to anyone. As many as 50% of all new businesses in this country will fail in the first 5 years. And if you don't believe that, take a look at all the shuttered businesses that are just down because of COVID right now. Being an individual business owner is a tough business, and the toughest of them all is the restaurant business. So the next big thing, preparing for retirement. This is the one that typically give a lot of attention to. But I'll give you the numbers here. 20 years. Increasing life expectancy has made retirement an extended stage of life. Just like my father-in-law, he's actually retired longer than he actually worked. Most retirements will last anywhere from 25 to 30 years. That's a lot of time to plan for with just retirement income to consider. So how do you maximize your opportunity to live a very comfortable retirement? Number one, and this is the first piece of advice I give to everybody, and that's part of the reason why you all are here, is you take advantage of your 401k plan at work, especially if you have a matching contribution from your employer, and save up to the amount at least that they will match. 401k holders today, I think the number, and forgive me if I'm wrong, I think this data is a little old, Loretta. Isn't it like 26.5 now?
That's correct. It's 19.5 if you're under 50, and then the additional 6,500 if you're age 50 or older. So yes, correct. 26.5 for the 2020 plan year.
Right, and the one number you threw out includes the catch-up plan for older folks, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. The other thing is, if you change employers and there is not a plan, don't forget to start your IRA and to roll it over to roll your old 401k plan over into an IRA so that you can control it yourself. Also a really good idea. Calculate your annual expected withdrawals. There are everywhere on the internet you can find a retirement calculator, or you can consult with your financial advisor to help you figure out how much money you can withdraw while still making your money grow and last for the remainder of your retirement. Certainly if you have an IRA, you're going to have a mandatory required minimum distribution, but most people will take out a little bit more than that on an annual basis, and you want to make sure you're not killing your opportunity to continue to grow your money by taking out too much. Other factors. Are you planning a second career? How is that going to affect your Social Security? How is that going to affect your IRA distributions? Are you going to plan to volunteer? Are you going to plan to retire? Will you be relocating? In other words, selling that big old house, relocating to a smaller house, and are you going to be in a different state? All of those require some fancy planning, if you will, especially if you go to another state. It's going to directly affect your estate plan, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Conduct a financial assessment with your spouse and when planning for retirement. This is a big one. My husband and I sit down every year, once a year, to go over all of our savings. And every year I bring all the stuff that's alone in my name. He brings all the stuff that's in his name alone, meaning his 401k plan at work and my 401k plan at work. All of our other stuff that we had before we got married, and then all of our joint assets that we've been saving for since we've been married. And every year when we sit down and we do that, my husband goes through it all And the one thing he always forgets about is my 2 pension plans. And he takes a look at that. He's like, oh man, I always forget about that every year. And he goes, that's more money than I thought that we had. This is a really good thing. So even if it's just to remind your spouse that you're in better shape than you thought that you were, it's a really good idea to put all the cards on the table once a year and see how you're doing. The other thing is to make sure that you're reviewing your insurance coverage. Health insurance is a big political topic right now, but all politics aside, you want to make sure that you're covered, your spouse is covered, and you want to understand what continuing coverage is going to look like when you're retired, whether it's going to be a combination of private health insurance, Medicare, and some employee benefit covered health insurance may roll over and it may accrue to your spouse. Sometimes military benefits also complicate that situation or enhance that situation. So take all of that into consideration. All right, next slide, Loretta. All right, this is my big ball of wax here. All right, passing on to heirs. Nobody likes to think about the time when we're not going to be here anymore, but it requires a certain minimum amount of planning to handle everything and make sure that your loved ones are well taken care of after you're gone. Now, I already mentioned this, 70% of baby boom aged women will actually outlive their husbands. 80 to 90% of women will be solely responsible for their own finances at some point in time in their lives. So for those you gals who actually delegate some of the responsibility for savings and the investment management choices that you have, understand at some point you're going to get caught and you're going to have to end up doing it for yourself. The other thing that you need to consider is having an actual estate plan, meaning a will, to control the distribution of everything that you have to your children. I always tell everybody, you can create your own plan, or you can just let the state that you live in do the plan for you. And if you opt for that one, which means dying intestate or without a will, then the state in which you reside will say, this is how much money your surviving spouse is going to get, this is how much money your children are going to get, and you might not like the way that they distribute it. So one of the cheapest things to do on this earth is to have a will. And it's not very hard to do. It's a whole lot easier to set it up when you're younger because you just don't have a lot of complications yet. So start off early and get the cheap version. The other thing is you want to make sure that your kids know that you have a plan. There's no great clearinghouse in the sky that after you're gone, your kids can go to say, gee, I think my mom and dad had a will, where do I go to look for that? There isn't one. There are some states that will allow you to register a will with the courthouse. Most of them don't, but in just to prepare, make sure everybody knows that you do have a plan and where the plan is and who the attorney is that you need to contact to get this specific information. The next biggest thing that you need to consider is designating someone your durable power of attorney. And I'm actually dealing with this one right now. My mother, we found out my mother has brain cancer. She's not been able to handle her finances for a while because she hasn't been able to focus. And fortunately for her, she set up a durable power of attorney about 8 or 9 years ago. She named me that power of attorney so I could seamlessly step in and handle her finances with no problem. Everybody recognizes the power of attorney, which means that I can act exactly like my mother. I can sign her checks, I can pay her bills, I can sign contracts, I can buy and sell, stocks and bonds, I can sell her house. It gives someone the ability to act exactly as if you were that person. Again, this is one of the cheaper documents you can get from an estate planning attorney. And not only does it allow you to do this stuff, but it actually prevents something called a guardianship proceeding, which it's ugly and it's awful and it's expensive and it's messy and you want to avoid it at all costs. So there, I just got off my soapbox. Powers of attorney are a really important thing. The next biggest thing is a healthcare power of attorney or a healthcare proxy, meaning that just like I can handle my mother's finances by having her durable or general power of attorney, also naming someone who will act as your agent when healthcare decisions need to be made. If for whatever reason you're in a coma, you can't decide, I want to be taken off life support, or I want to have life-saving surgery, or what have you. Someone has to have the ability to make those decisions. So that's another thing that comes as part of your estate plan that I highly encourage you to give a lot of thought to. All right, next slide. Few things to consider above and beyond. I love this slide. The sandwich generation, and here's where I fall at the moment. This means generally someone, usually right now they're in their 60s and maybe potentially 70s, who at the same time they may still be taking care of children, adult children. They're also taking care of their parents. It's a double whammy, and it's incredibly tricky to plan for on a savings and retirement basis. So I always tell everyone, if you think you fall into this category, it is almost mandatory that you work with a financial advisor, because there are a lot of things to consider. The other thing is that now you have a lot more savings vehicles to help you. Actually, my firm just sent out a notice today reminding us of what the changes are in our healthcare savings plans. In this case, we're talking about a health savings account. This is essentially allowing you to, save money on a pre-tax basis for, a certain amount of healthcare costs during the course of the year. Really important to have this, because most Americans underestimate the amount of money that they're going to be spending in retirement for their healthcare costs. Okay, go ahead. Next slide. And the last thing, and I don't think this is going to be a big surprise for anybody, is, above and beyond everything that we've talked about savings for, so for weddings, for, changing your job, losing your job, savings for retirement, having a child, there's something called a rainy day fund. It's an old-fashioned concept, but it still rings very true today. You're going to need to have that little slush fund, as I'd like to call it, that's going to be around to pay for any household repairs, any car repairs, medical deductibles for that little trip to the emergency room that you've made. A big one for us, for me especially, unexpected dental costs. I literally just had 4 teeth replaced, and it's not cheap. So, having that little extra put away in a slush fund helped to pay for the deductibles on that. And then having a few months worth of household expenses in cash in an account tends to be a really good idea. Just if you run into a snag, you're going to be that much more able to sleep at night knowing that you'll be able to handle it if something were to happen. Okay, next slide, Loretta. Okay, we have something that we can help you save and plan for all the stuff that we just retire, or that we just talked about, especially about retirement. We've got a couple of things that we can send out electronically. Loretta, can they notify you if these are things that they want to get?
Yeah, absolutely, Karen. And we will actually post this presentation as well as all of the resources that you can send over to me. We'll post those on our Goulden & McCarthy Financial Wellness portal. So that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, yeah. It's something called Anticipating the Unexpected brochure that helps you to create that plan that we're talking about. Along with it, there's something called a Surviving Spouse Checklist that for most people, you're thinking, oh, I don't really need this. I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon in terms of dying. But it's great for folks who have older parents. It helps you to get them organized around a lot of things before anything happens to them. And then lastly, there's something called a life events checklist that helps you to go through before you meet with your financial advisor, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or annually, and it gives you a jumping off place with that advisor on what you want to talk about for each meeting when you go in. So we can actually, like you said, Loretta's going to have those available for a while for you to actually be able to get.
Perfect.
And then there are other partners that are involved above and beyond your financial advisor. Certainly, I already mentioned your estate planning attorney. If you have complicated tax situations, I highly encourage an accountant. And then other professionals that may or may not fall into your wheelhouse, so to speak, if you have a complicated business arrangement, or if you have a complicated family arrangement, an insurance specialist might be necessary, along with a family banker. Okay, and I think that's one more. Is that the end? I think that
Yeah,
might be
I
the
think
last. That's the last slide. You
yeah,
get
I think that takes
you
us right to the end. Karen, thank you so much.
the
This was
ubiquitous
perfect.
disclosure. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Disclosures and just on our closing slide here, Karen went through a lot of great content, and obviously we can probably all think about all of our life stages, and we may be overlapping in some of these life stages at different times. I find that the only thing that is constant in life is change, and so we need to always be preparing and planning for many things that we have going on. Please use our office as a resource. You can reach out to Goulden & McCarthy, as always, as a participant in a 401k plan, or whether you're looking to discuss financial planning in depth, we are available to you guys. With that, I want to thank everybody for your time again. Karen, thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.